You're listening to The Tales We Tell, a podcast about spooky stories, unsolved mysteries, and local lore. I'm your host, Hannah Parch.
And I'm Katy.
Welcome back. I feel like that was a really good intro.
It was. I was going to have to burp during it. And I was like, uh-oh.
Oh, that's okay.
Classy.
All last week while we were recording, I was holding in farts. So you're welcome for that.
You know, Critters, one of his favorite things now is if I ever burp, of course I immediately say, excuse me. And also, most of the time, if I have to burp, I kind of hold it in.
Yeah.
Because, as a woman, I've been repressed because that women aren't allowed to burp.
Of course.
Or have natural bodily gases or anything like that. Heaven forbid. But when he's around, I do intentionally let myself burp so that I can then immediately say, excuse me, to set that example and kind of reinstate it. And he thinks it's hilarious. And so sometimes he'll hear Shelton burp. And he'll say, "Excuse me. Excuse me." But now he thinks it's hilarious. He's like, "Mama burp. Mama say, erp." and I'll have to fake a burp. I'll go, I'll be dramatic and build it up. And then I go,
I was going to say, you made me fake a burp the other day.
Right, I did.
I don't know how to do that.
You just make a silly sound and then say, excuse me. And it cracks him up.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I went to Katy's for the first time in months.
Yeah. Slacker.
Was very concerned Walker was not going to remember or like me, but he does. And to my horror, he is talking way more. He can say his whole name.
Walker?
He thinks that every time he has to address Katy, he has to say, "Hey, mama," every sentence, which is really adorable.
Hey, mama. Hey, mama.
Hey, mama, this. Hey, mama, all within one request. He'll say it 3 or 4 times, which is really cute. Better than other things he could be talking to.
So cute. Oh, you mean the other night when it was just me and him and I got him out of the tub and I'm getting ready to bring him to his room and he stops and looks towards the other corner of the room. In the corner.
In your room?
Where, in our room where it's Shelton's side of the bed. There's nothing. There's a lamp and a dresser and
where that shadow was.
And he's just super calm and he goes, "Somebody's here." Or "Someone's here."
Stop it.
I was just like, is that what I heard? So I said, "Somebody's here?" And he goes, "Yes." And I looked over and he's just kind of not doing his 1,000-yard stare, which is creepy in and of itself.
Yeah.
But he's just kind of looking in that general direction. I was like, okay.
Oh, that's terrifying.
I don't see anybody. So nobody's here. So we're going to go to Walker's room and get dressed. And we're going to pretend like this never happened. And so, we go to his room. He gets dressed. I get him in bed. I then go downstairs to take care of the dogs and, shut down the downstairs. And as I'm going down the stairs, I see out the front door that parked right in front of our house is our neighbor's kid. And he and, I think maybe our neighbor or one of his friends, they're all out there working on his car. So I'm thinking that he saw outside of the window when I'd gotten him out of that he saw that the car was there. And I was like, someone's here.
Let's go with that, because anything
else
that's
what I'm telling myself.
Terrifying, and I won't be coming back to your house.
That's the first creepy thing he's ever actually said.
Oh my gosh. Well, speaking of audio, my funny story is that for the past couple weeks, I have been thinking that there's a problem with our volume because it's terrible because I don't intentionally listen to our podcast, but it'll autoplay after another one that I'm listening to.
We lived it. Yeah, we lived the podcast.
I already know what we're going to say. And it's always really quiet. And so twice I've texted Jarek and I'm like, the podcast is really quiet. You got to do something to get the audio up. I don't know why, because I'm like French kissing this mic, and that mic is really expensive.
I'm having to actually push it away to keep from French kissing the mic,
so
because it is uncomfortably close to my face.
I know it's not like an equipment problem. Anyways, twice I have told him, like, we have a problem. No, my right earbud is dying is the problem. That's the problem. My right earbud literally is just, I don't know if
it's not an us problem. It's a you problem.
It's a me problem. I had both of them in today on the ride home, and I was like, I'm pretty sure just my left one is playing. And I don't know if I just need to like charge the little case more, or if I just need to go ahead and buy new ones. But luckily it was just me. So
unless any of you listeners are also having a similar situation,
please tell us.
Please let us know.
I was really close to making an Instagram post to be like, sorry for the audio trouble, everyone. We're working on it. I'm glad I didn't.
Well, speaking of listeners.
Yes.
I ran into one today.
One that you know? Knew?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Who?
Melissa.
Oh, wait.
So, yes.
Okay.
So, remember, this was a couple of months ago. I was downtown with, Shelton and Walker.
Right.
And, we're hanging out, and I say Shelton, and I refer to Walker as Critter. And that's when this woman turned, she goes, do you have a podcast? And she was just super, like, kind of shy and, like, I think I know exactly who you are, but I feel a little awkward just approaching this random stranger. And I was like, I do. And she's like, are you Katy from the Tales We Tell? Do you listen to our podcast?
Are you Katy from the Tales We Tell?
I was super excited.
Obviously.
And so we had a great conversation that time.
Right. I think she messaged us on Instagram.
Yeah. She did.
And now I have a story that I'm really excited about. I already told Katy, no one dies.
Nobody dies.
Sorry.
Which means at least one or two people die that she had forgotten about, but they're kind of like super minor side characters that don't really matter.
I should say, like, no one died. No one's murdered.
No one important
in
dies.
the main story. I did just remember that a baby dies, but not in the main story. It's just part of background. It's just background. It's just background.
I was just teasing about how you forget, but you can't forget that a baby dies.
In the 1800s.
That still upsets me.
And by baby, maybe it was a toddler. I don't know. Let's just jump right in.
You know what's something I think about every now and then?
What's that?
If I had been born basically any other time, I would not be alive today. Like, basically, if I had been born and have lived my life and everything is exactly the same, like, biologically, I probably would have died at 3 months old.
Yeah, you had a serious illness.
I had bronchitis to the point that I had been hospitalized. Or I had been brought to the hospital.
Yeah.
Or the ER or something a couple of times, and I had a breathing machine. But yeah, no, it probably would not have survived at that point.
Yeah.
And even if I did, I have terrible eyesight. I would not survive in any kind of like hunter-gatherer situation.
Yeah. I think depending on the time frame, I would have either been committed or burned at the stake. I don't know. I don't think my mental illness would unmedicated would lend itself well to like 19th century.
I'm such a pro at masking that I'm basically a sociopath.
And I am not. I have an art heist for you.
Okay, all I can think of right now is Cary Elwes in his recurring role in Psych.
Well, that's not... I mean, you can picture him as one of these thieves.
I would love to.
Okay.
Cary Elwes is amazing. It's hilarious.
But first, I have to tell you about Isabella Steward Gardner, because this is her museum that gets heisted. And she's your first picture.
Oh,
I
have a fleshed out dossier this week, folks.
Katy gets a great dossier.
Which means y'all get a great dossier on the Instagram.
Which also, full disclosure, I was an art history major. A bunch of your pictures are just the art that's stolen, and it's lovely for me to get to see it again.
Ooh, Isabella. She fine.
Right? So Isabella was born April 14th of 1840 in New York City. And I'm going to kind of run through her history pretty quick because it's interesting. It's very interesting, but like also not part of the actual story.
All right. I'll just let you do your thing.
So her parents were pretty wealthy. She studied art, music, dance, French, and Italian. And when she was 16, her family moved to Paris, just casually for a couple years. They returned to New York when she was 18 in 1858. And shortly after she returned home, she met and married John Lowell Jack Gardner in 1860. Jack was from a wealthy Boston family, so it was like, oh, the Gardners of Boston, the Boston Gardners.
It was the Gardners.
Yeah, the God. Thank you. Oh my gosh. So they settled in Boston in a house that Isabella's father gave them. They had one son in 1863. He did die of pneumonia 2 years later. So that was it. That's all. Sorry. So
what did I tell you? She lies. Anytime she says nobody dies, I'm like, except for that one or two people.
Baby.
Yeah. And a child, no less.
I'm so sorry. Well,
I mean, understand what you mean is nobody dies as a result of the story.
Yes.
People die all the time. It happens.
So shortly after the death of her son, she did suffer a miscarriage, and then she was told that she couldn't have any more children. So she became very depressed, very withdrawn, like very understandably so. And in 1867, she and Jack traveled to Europe in hopes of improving her health. And I did read something that like her health was so poor at this time that she was carried onto the ship on a stretcher. So this was really one of those like, we got to go get some better air for you to breathe. And it worked. So they go to Europe. And like, I'm very glad it worked. Like, obviously she's mourning, she's having a hard time, but like, you absolutely deserve to be happy after bad things happen to you.
I don't know if it was so much the air because,
no,
I mean, where in Europe did she go? Did she go back to like Paris?
They did spend a lot of time in Paris. But, okay.
The air's not great there. It's not at that time. It's not great there now. It's this giant city that has been around for a long time. So, no, the air's not great there. The water's not great there.
No.
I think it was a change of scenery.
Yes.
More than anything. She was out of that house. Mm-hmm. She was away from like the pitying eyes of all the friends and neighbors and any family. Yeah. Just getting a chance to get away from her problems. Yeah.
And for someone
so that she could breathe and start to heal and slowly deal with her problems because it's not avoidance.
No.
It is sometimes
it's finding your joy after. It's like finding yourself after something bad happens.
It's so hard to grieve when you're drowning in grief. Mm-hmm. If you can distract yourself from it, it gives you a chance to breathe again, heal yourself, get yourself in a better mind state to then deal. It's not avoidance. It's
And for someone who grew up studying like art and music and French, like hello. I studied art for 4 years and that's it. And I would love to go hang out in Paris.
Beauty in art, share in others' pain and other emotions that you also experience are like art is a great
it is.
Distraction and also healing tool.
Yeah.
I know somebody who's actually got their master's in music therapy. Mm-hmm. So
nice. Well, when they returned to the States, Isabella established herself as a fashionable socialite. Like, she was like, okay, I've made peace with, I'm not going to be a mother.
That's not a role for me.
Not a role for me. Here's another role that I enjoy.
And good for her.
Good for her. And to be fair, which I don't know if I...
Mourn what you lost, but
yeah.
Also find something else to
And I do think, which I didn't write it in
awesome.
here, I do think they eventually take in, like, either his or her nieces and nephews. I don't know. They have some children that they are able to raise.
Mm-hmm.
So starting in 1874, the Gardners made a habit of just traveling around the world, across America, everywhere. And they began collecting fine art. Specifically,
they've got
paintings.
Disposable income.
Oh my gosh, they have so much disposable money.
Travel and art. Absolutely.
Like, so much money.
Man, Chilton, I used to travel all the time.
Oh my gosh. Some notable paintings that they acquired included works by Titian, Vermeer, Rembrandt, Michelangelo, Botticelli, Raphael, Degas, and Manet. So Titian was a Renaissance painter. I think he was a contemporary of the masters. I don't know if he was one of them, but like picture Raphael and Michelangelo and
all the other dudes you listed.
Yeah. And then Vermeer painted.
So what was the painting that you looked up? The painting that was
the one I just showed you.
Mm-hmm.
That's called The Rape of Europa.
And I have seen that one. And
Okay.
it looked familiar, and then when you told me the name, it was like, yes,
yeah,
I
it's
have
one of
heard
those
of that
like beautifully, like really dramatic, like she's like laid out on a bull and like everyone's posed so that their body is like perfectly angled, and there's cherubs in the sky, and
it's based on a Greek myth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
you don't see any rape happening in it.
No.
It's an unfortunate title. And then Vermeer was the second one I said. He painted the girl with the pearl earring.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a Dutch. Yes, he was a Dutch. Whatever.
He was Dutch.
He was Dutch. He's. This will come up later. There's only about 35 paintings that have ever been attributed to him, but he is known as like one of the. I keep wanting to call them all masters. They're not, but like, I feel like he's on par with Rembrandt. Anyways, everyone check out the Instagram. There's going to be pictures.
He was a talented dude.
He was very talented. Okay. Well, in 1898, Jack died suddenly. Sorry. Last death.
Two people died in this story where nobody died.
This is the last sudden death. You can infer that Isabella dies at some point, but she dies of old age. So after Jack died, Isabella set out to fulfill the collective dream that they had shared, which was building a museum to house their extensive art collection.
Also, can I just say I love that, yeah, it was rough what she went through, but he stayed by her side through it.
Yeah.
And was like, okay, so we won't have kids. We'll do something else.
We'll do other stuff.
We'll do it together.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's very sweet.
Please tell me that he wasn't like off having affairs. Like, if he was, I don't want to hear it. That's not the story that I have in my head.
I didn't read anything about him having affairs. So, and it was their collective dream to have this museum. So from everything I could tell, they had a very loving marriage.
They were partners.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
because that is key, as we were talking about the other day with partners, talking about, especially, when it comes to parenting, which is different than their collective dream. But we have a collective, Shelton and I have a collective dream of raising not a monster.
Right. Important. So this museum was located in the Fenway area of Boston, and Isabella was deeply involved in the design. She wanted it modeled after the Renaissance palaces of Venice, because of course. And on January 1st,
why not?
1903, the Isabella Steward Gardner Museum opened privately, and then a few months later, it was open to the public. And Isabella actually decreed that the museum should be free of charge so that the public could enjoy all of this art. I know, I love it so much.
Art is for everyone, not just people with money.
I know, I love it.
Art is for everyone to enjoy. Art is for everyone to do.
Yes. And
if you want to paint something and you can't afford paints, there should be a place for you to go and have access to paint.
There should be. And I'm going to take this opportunity, my tiny little art history soapbox, is go to art museums. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to like know the story behind a painting, know about the artist, know about the style, know about the symbolism to enjoy art, because you don't.
It's
Art
okay to look at something and be like, that's a pretty picture, and that's all you've got.
Yeah.
You don't need to have any other reaction. You don't need to have a...
You don't need a technical knowledge of it.
No, you don't need to have a, oh, well, you know, the dark colors here invoke this kind of emotion, but then the way that he swirls his paintbrushes. No. You can literally just say, that's a pretty picture, and move on. Yeah. Or you can say, I don't get like this one. It doesn't.
And that's fine.
And then move on. Not every piece has to speak to you. It doesn't have to be more. It doesn't have to be deeper. You can just think a picture is pretty.
Yep.
And move on. And I guarantee the artist would also be happy.
Yeah.
That you just said, that's pretty. I like this picture. That's all they need.
Yeah. So Isabella lived on the 4th floor of the museum until her death in 1924.
Third death of the episode, folks.
Ripe old age of 84.
I know, she doesn't count. I just
Death is coming for us all. But in her will, Isabella instructed that her collection be permanently exhibited, quote, for the education and enjoyment of the public forever. She also said that no significant changes could be made to the design or the arrangement of the exhibits. No artwork could be sold from or purchased into the collection. So, like, if you go today, the museum is, like, essentially how she designed it.
So, I feel like I respect that, but at the same time, I feel like what would have been best if she had said, okay, my personal collection is going to be restricted to floors 2 and 3. And that's where everything stays the same.
Right.
Floor 1 is for new exhibits to show new artists, because she's got some classic, artists. But there's modern artists. There's artists of her time. There's going to be artists in her future that are going to be just as good and just as, important.
I don't know. I kind of like that she was like, and like from what I understand,
I just feel like that makes it stagnant and stale.
Well, let me tell you about something exciting that happened there.
Art theft.
Okay. So, Sunday, March 18th.
Critter's due date.
Oh, 1990. So, close to...
Not Critter's year.
I was going to say close to my mom's due date with me. Just the same year. So, it's early morning hours after St. Patrick's Day.
Me, 6 months and 8 and 10 days old.
So, it's essentially still St. Patrick's Day, right? Like 12:30 a.m.
in Boston,
on the 18th in Boston is still St. Patrick's Day. So around 12:30, some people who were leaving a party or a bar saw 2 police officers parked in a hatchback near the side entrance of the museum. Inside the museum, there are 2 night guards, Rick Abeth, who's 23, and Randy Heston, who's 25.
Rick and Randy.
For Randy, it was his first time on the night shift. So I don't think it's his first night as a guard. I think it's just first time on the night shift. But again, 23 and 25 years old. This is all that stands between the public and so many paintings.
But yeah, they're in their early 20s. They are young and spry and in their prime, theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't seen pictures of Rick and Randy yet.
Mm-hmm.
But...
Well, I will say, important note, at the time...
Are they in my dossier?
One of them will be in a second. Okay. He's got really great hair, whichever one he is. So at the time, museum guards were paid slightly more than minimum wage, which at the time was $3.80 an hour, which today would be $9.15 an hour, which ironically is higher than North Carolina's minimum wage. So someone do something about that.
I was about to say, I'm like, okay, slightly higher than a minimum wage in 1990 is probably still much more livable than minimum wage today.
In a better economy. But, like, you would have to think they've got to be making, like, maybe $11-12 an hour, like, in today's money.
Right.
And the board had recently denied a request for higher guard salaries, which had been requested as a way to attract more qualified applicants. So they're like, hey, if we want some more qualified guards, we should be paying them more. And the board was like,
what a novel concept.
The board said, nah.
If you want people to care about the work that they're doing, pay them a living wage.
That's such a weird socialist thing for you to say, Katie. I can't believe.
It hurts.
Oh my gosh.
It hurts.
It's okay. The tax breaks for the billionaires will just trickle down to us eventually, and we'll be doing fine. I saw a thing on Facebook. It was like, calm down. Everyone was going to pay their loans back when the tax breaks from the billionaires trickled down to us. Oh my gosh. Sorry, we're not here to talk politics. Okay, it's now...
We're only going to say nice thing about what's his face? VP candidate.
Tim Walz.
Tim Walz.
And his sweet son, Gus.
I don't know anything about Gus. I do love the fact that his name is Gus. And I have stories about people named Gus that are all wonderful. But just that one clip, I just can't get out of my head talking about the tacos.
I also saw a thing. It was like a reporter. I think it was for like the Daily Show or something. And she was like, I'm at the Democratic National Convention, and my goal is to get an interview with Tim Walz, but like obviously he's hard to get a hold of, so I have to get creative. And so she just walked, the whole video is her like, she was like, turns down the thermostat, and she's like, I hope no one saw me turn the thermostat down. She was one was like,
did he poke his head out and be like, did someone touch the thermostat?
Does anyone know how to change the oil in my car? And then the very last one, she's like, by a fire.
Just dad bait.
Yeah.
Basically.
She's by a fire
putting out
extinguisher.
dad bait.
And she was like, does anyone know how to tell if this fire extinguisher is expired or not? And then this like random old man comes up. He's like, oh yeah, I can see where it's punched here and here. And she's like, are you Tim Walz? And he's like, no. She's like, oh, never mind. But it was just all like, just like the best of dad things. It was great.
Brilliant.
When she interviewed one guy, or she was talking to one guy, she's like, do you have a motorcycle? Oh, I sure hope no one is here to stop this ill-fated romance where I could get on the back of your motorcycle. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So we talked about it the other night, and I was like, there's just something so relatable about him. He's like the most relatable guy in DC. I had another experience like that today with a shark.
Of course you did.
Well, we were at the aquarium, and we're in the section where they've got the big tank where the sharks are. Mm-hmm. And it's the sharks and the other lots of different fish species, and they just all swim in a circle. That's their life. They just circle. And then this one shark's like, no, I'm tired of the circle. And it just lays on the floor, on the ocean floor.
Yeah.
And Connor are both like, what?
Is he okay?
And he's like, I didn't think sharks could do that. I was like, okay. And I was like, so I know that there's some sharks that, yes, they absolutely have to keep moving, but what they do, it's not that they don't sleep, it's that they just kind of go in this, like, they're kind of basically sleepwalking, but it's sleep swimming, and it's just, they're
Muscle
asleep,
memory.
but they just, slowly are gliding through the water just to keep, the water moving, therefore oxygen pumping through their gills and whatnot.
Right.
And there's some sharks that can stay still, and I've seen some sharks that will like hang out on reefs and be still and kind of watch and wait and stalk prey and whatnot. But I don't think I've ever seen one just lay down where it is. Very tired. And so Connor Googled it, and we're like looking at this information. He was like, okay, well, yeah, some do. Yeah. And then I happened to be looking at the screen where they've got the, like basically a slideshow of all the fish that are in the tank. I was like, it's a nurse shark.
Oh, yeah, nurse sharks just hang out on the bottom, don't they?
Because, and Connor then Googled specifically nurse sharks and laying on the bottom of the ocean floor. Nurse sharks are considered to be the couch potatoes of the sea.
Relatable.
And like just looking at this shark, just the way it was just like, I'm done with the circles. I'm just gonna lay here and chill for a little bit.
Oh gosh.
Like, I've never related to a shark or any kind of aquatic species more in my life.
Nice. I like.
So sorry for the really random sidebar of the aquarium and sharks and Tim Walls, but back to art now.
Back to the museum. It's now 1 a.m. So Rick was at the security desk and Randy was patrolling the galleries. At some point, the fire alarm went off indicating smoke in several of the galleries. But Rick checked all of the rooms and didn't find any evidence of fire or smoke, so he just turned the alarm off. At 1:20 a.m., the buzzer at the side door rang. And through the intercom, the two policemen from earlier, told Rick that they had been called out to a disturbance. So Rick's the one who's still at the desk, Randy's patrolling. And Rick wasn't aware of any disturbance that had been called in, but he assumed, he's like, it's St. Patrick's Day, maybe someone climbed over the fence and someone called that in. So he lets the two policemen inside.
People messing around the outside, nothing to trip any alarms.
Yeah. Just someone maybe calling, someone was messing with something they shouldn't have been. So 1:24, the two policemen are let inside. Once they're inside, they ask Rick if anyone else is in the museum. And Rick is like, yeah, Randy's here.
So just Randy.
It's just Randy. But he radios for him to come back to the front desk. Apparently around this time, this was also when Rick noticed that one of the police officers appeared to be wearing a fake mustache. Okay. And while they're waiting...
I didn't suspect anything like this at all.
While they were waiting for Randy, one of the policemen is like, hey, you look familiar. I think I might have a warrant out on you. So he makes Rick come out from behind the desk to provide ID, which is important because the desk was the only place with a panic button. Once he comes out from behind the desk, they push him against the wall and handcuff him. And then Randy gets there and they do the same thing to him. And then they say, surprise, we're not actually cops, we're robbers. And we're
cops and robbers.
We're here to rob the museum.
I'm so surprised by this sudden turn of events.
I know, right?
Nothing could have prepared me for this kind of situation.
And then this seems unnecessary. They wrapped duct tape around the guards' heads and eyes. And that's your picture, your next picture. I don't know if this is Rick or Randy. But they just tied duct tape around their faces. Took them...
The hair.
I know, the hair's amazing.
The length is Connor's length.
Yep. But the volume...
It's coiled, like kinky curls.
Beautiful curls.
Like, these are... It reminds me of Weird Al.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I first saw this, I just saw Weird Al.
It's a shame that some of that hair probably got pulled out with that duct tape. They take him to the basement. They handcuff them to...
Why duct tape their eyes? They've already seen him.
I don't know.
Fake mustache or not, they've seen you.
And they're leaving them in the basement.
So I would be the worst person in the event of a situation like that, be like, dude, you do not have to blindfold me. I will never pick you out of a lineup ever again. I guarantee it.
Yeah,
I am
real.
terrible.
I don't get paid enough to
I am
do that.
terrible with names and faces.
Yeah.
I get not tell you how many times people are like, hey, Katie, how's it going? And I'm like, I don't know.
Great. It's going great. So they handcuff them to like a pipe, and then they take their IDs, like they take their wallets, and they're like, okay, now we know your address, so like better not say anything. And then they say, oh, if you don't call the authorities, we'll send you a reward in about a year.
It's going to take them that long to fence the paintings?
Well, and but who's going to believe that? Like, okay, I'm not
twiddle my thumbs for a year. Meanwhile, I'm definitely losing my job.
No one's going to notice that the museum's been robbed. Like, anyways.
I mean, they might not lose their job after after getting robbed.
Mm-hmm.
They would definitely lose their jobs if they got robbed and did not call the authorities.
That's true, but also
because then you can be considered like culpable and accomplice and blah 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 blah. But if immediately they were able to, as soon as they were able to contact somebody and they did, then it's like, no, you can't.
And, like, spoiler alert, they leave them in the basement all night, so like they don't have a chance to do it. They probably aren't the ones who called the authorities. Okay, 13.
I mean, this is a serious duct tape job.
I know.
And if they were handcuffed, you know, I highly doubt that these guys have lock-picking tools in their, tucked away in their, night guard uniforms.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't even look like this guy's wearing a night guard uniform.
It doesn't look like he's wearing a uniform at all. Okay, so 13 minutes later, it's 1:48, and the two thieves begin making their way through the museum. I think your next picture is a map.
Is a map.
Okay, great. So they are going to start on the second floor in the Dutch room. So they go into the Dutch room. They smash a sensor that went off when someone got too close to a painting. Love that. Then they take two paintings.
Wouldn't the sensor then go off for being damaged?
I don't know. They said they like broke it, I guess. I don't know.
I guess tech worked different than ours.
So they removed two paintings, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee and A Lady and Gentleman in Black, which are both Rembrandts. Notably, The Sea of Galilee was Rembrandt's only seascape. And those two pictures are next if you want to look at them while you reference your map. They throw them on the ground to shatter the glass in the frames, and then they
roll up the canvas.
Cut the canvas out of the frame, which hurts my heart a lot. Then they removed a Rembrandt self-portrait, but they didn't take it, presumably because they didn't realize it was painted on wood panel, and they couldn't
roll it up.
They also took Landscape with Obelisk by Govert Flink.
Also next?
Yes, that's in there as well.
I want to keep looking.
This one, I think, had been attributed to Rembrandt, and only very recently was it later attributed to Flink, who was, I think, one of Rembrandt's students.
Well, I mean, if you compare that to
the first,
the Sea of Galilee, I can totally see why you would assume it's the same guy. I mean, look at the use of colors there coming out of the storm clouds, the dark to the light.
Yeah, and that happens, I think, a lot.
And I'm not at all an art connoisseur. I'm not a student of art in the least. I know that you can look at brushstroke styles.
You can look tell at style in general. Yeah.
Best I got is that looks
similar. They also took The Concert by Vermeer, and again, being one of only maybe 34, 35 paintings attributed to Vermeer, it's kind of a big deal. And it's actually believed that that is the most valuable stolen object in the world. Today, that painting is worth...
I thought there was a Picasso that was, like, that had been missing for quite some time.
I don't know. Someone can fact check this. But today, that Vermeer is worth an estimated $250 million, which is a lot of money.
Goes to show that things only have the value that people ascribe to them.
It's true. Something's only worth what someone will pay for it.
Yep.
But if I was a millionaire, I'm not saying I wouldn't try to buy, like,
well, because
Vermeer.
at that point, it's not about the art. It's about the status symbol.
It's about the artist, yeah.
Yeah, it's a status symbol. It's bragging rights. Like, I am so rich and so cultured and fancy that I can own this very expensive, exclusive, rare painting. They don't care about the art itself.
I like to think that there are some art collectors out there who just really want to own, like, a Manet or a Van Gogh. I like to think that I'd be that kind of art collector, Katy.
Well, so I think there is a difference between, wanting to own something because it matters to you and you think it's cool. Like, yes, it would be amazing to own a piece of, this artist's work.
Right.
Because you're impressed by the artist and their work and you truly appreciate the art. But I feel like a lot, maybe not necessarily art collectors, but a lot of rich people who collect art only view it as a status symbol.
Oh, yeah,
and I feel like a lot of art is only, like, exalted and given this high value because of these snooty status symbol chasers, not because the art itself is cared about or understood or anything. And then I feel like at the same time there's a lot of art that is way better, that is, on the street corner for $25.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So also in the Dutch room, they take a very small self-portrait etching by Rembrandt, which I didn't include, a 12th century BC Chinese gu, I think is how you pronounce it. It's like a little vessel. I think it's used for serving wine.
How do you spell it?
Gu. That's my best guess. So
I'm just thinking about Goodnight Goon. A pot full of goo.
I was thinking about that today too. So meanwhile,
a pot full of goo.
One of the thieves leaves the Dutch room and they go to the short gallery, which is like kind of across the building. There's evidence that they tried to take a Napoleonic flag but gave up. And instead, they just took the finial on the top of the flagpole, which is like the eagle, the little gold eagle. Then they stole 5 Degas sketches, which were of relatively little value compared to what else we're grabbing.
I mean, it's still a Degas.
It's still 5 Degas sketches. And then at some point, one or both of the thieves presumably entered the blue room back on the first floor. I say presumably because motion detectors never indicated any movement in that room other than the earlier patrolling. And like motion detectors were picking up, like that's how we know what rooms they went to.
Yeah, I mean, you've got arrows and timestamps.
Yeah.
They were in the Dutch room at 1:48 and the short gallery at 1:51.
Yeah.
And the blue room is question mark.
Yeah, because we don't know when they went in, but they stole a Manet, which is your last one, I think. And help me out with the pronunciation of that title.
Chez Tortoni.
Thank you. It's a portrait of a man. It's beautiful. I love Manets. So they have their loot. Before they left, a little dark. Sorry. So before they left, the thieves removed the videotapes from the closed circuit cameras, as well as the data printouts from the motion detectors, which I did see a picture of those. They're hilarious. They're like alert, alert, someone in the blue room at whatever, investigate immediately. But it's just like a little printout on paper. So they took that. But like, there's a hard drive with
printout on one of those, no, the printers with the
yes,
perforated
with the continuous pages. We need to bring those back.
I remember those.
But there's a hard drive.
I lived with those. I've had to pull the perforated edges off. Like,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
how old I am.
It was a pain in the butt.
I'm not Gen X, but I am damn close.
I'm not close to Gen X, but I also had those. That's firmly a millennial thing, I feel like.
So I saw a funny video about there's the Zennials, the Gen. It's spelled with an X. It's
Right.
like basically millennials with an X.
Right.
And I'm like, well, Zennials makes you think of Gen Z and
Yeah.
millennials. And so, we've always been, I've also heard it called, we're cuspers, where, if you were born at this time, you're on the cusp of Gen X and millennial.
Like if you're a millennial born in the 80s.
And so people were like, yeah, it's more like, yeah, you were there, but you were aware, but you did not live the Gen X experience.
Yeah.
And I'm
that's
like,
how I feel about a lot of the 90s.
I think on one hand, like in certain areas, yeah, I was like on the periphery and I remember that.
Yeah.
But there's other things that I'm like, no, I fully lived that.
Well, I remember printing out MapQuest directions on the continuous pages and having to tear them apart.
I remember the floppy disks that were actually floppy.
The floppy disks that were actually floppy.
Yeah, those big boys.
I don't remember those.
Yeah, they were.
I remember the 3.5-inch floppies.
Those were. Yeah, they were floppy disks, but they were solid plastic. I mean, not solid plastic, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They didn't flop. The inside flopped. No, I'm talking like these guys. They were like this big. I forget their dimensions, but they were floppy, and I used to have to use those for some computer programs, and I'd put those in, and it was a black screen with orange, very pixelated font.
Nice.
And those were the programs that I would work with.
Oh man. Well, they didn't touch.
I am a for sure cusper.
They did not
Zennial or
touch
whatever.
the floppy disks that everything was stored on.
Now, were they floppies, or were they?
Who knows? We do know that they began
in 1990. They're probably floppies.
They began transporting the stolen art to their vehicle at 2:40 a.m. because that's when they opened the side door, and they were done by 2:45. The whole robbery took 81 minutes. 13 pieces were stolen with a total estimated value of, at the time, $200 million.
And what is that estimated value today?
Well, in the late 2000s, it was pushed to around $600 million. So, they got away with a lot.
One thing I've never understood about stealing these high-profile pieces.
Were you going to sell it?
They're worth a lot, but who's going to buy it? Because anyone who's going to buy it, you can't display it. At best, you can maybe sell it again and again, and like it has to be sold multiple times before someone's like, yeah, I bought this piece and now I'm going to display it, even though I know that this is a piece that was at some point stolen. I'm not the buyer, but you're still displaying stolen art, so it's still going to get taken back because it's not actually yours, whether you paid for it or not.
Well, and something that'll come up is that possibly sometimes stolen art has been used as a bargaining chip, specifically to release certain people from prison.
Yep.
So that could be part of it. I also think they just sell them to other criminals, and someone could say.
And so what? When they have their, kingpin dinner parties, they're like, "Come look at my stolen art collection."
Who's gonna be like, "Oh, that's a lovely Rembrandt on your wall. I assume it's not the one that was stolen from the Gardner Museum in 1990. I assume it's a reproduction." Like, I don't know. I think there's very few people who would look at like a painting on someone's wall and assume...
I feel like if somebody's paying that much for an art piece, it's going to be featured and they're going to brag about it.
Maybe.
They're going to be like,
I mean, maybe Al Capone
you see
did
the painting over the fireplace? It's a Rembrandt.
I mean, yeah. But, like, also someone could say that. Someone who's, like, known to brag. And people could just be like, yeah, he always said it was a real Rembrandt. But, like, obviously, like, no one believed him.
It was
and,
a
like,
Finnick.
Yeah,
or whatever.
It was a Finnick. Poor Finnick. He was just as good. Oh, man. So
I mean, people thought his work was Rembrandt
for a long time, yeah. So the guards were found the following morning, like by the next shift, by the morning shift.
You probably checked in and were like, Rick, Randy, why is no one at the front desk?
No one here? And obviously, like, the heist was discovered. The FBI got involved almost immediately because, of course, they did.
Mm-hmm.
It was because the artwork was likely being transported across state lines. Also, I think the FBI just likes to, like, jump in on high-profile cases.
I think also with the magnitude of the value is one of the things. It goes beyond grand larceny.
Yeah. The variety of items in terms of their value was puzzling to investigators because, like, they took some Degas that were worth like a couple $100,000, and then they also took a Vermeer that's like it's like several $100 million. They also left the most expensive piece in the museum, which is Titian's Rape of Europa. It's like people speculate that maybe the reason they didn't get that one is because it is so big. It's 6 feet by 7 feet. But
and maybe as is so well known too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just weird that, like, it's like they knew specifically what they wanted, but also but also some of the things it's like they just saw on the way and grabbed them, like the finial on the top of the flagpole.
That's the thing about art, though, right? It's
whatever you like.
It's interpretive. Like, yeah, you can't judge whatever. If they went for what they wanted, or what they liked, then good for them.
Yeah, good for them, for real. Except please return it. There's almost no physical evidence left behind. They did find fingerprints and footprints. I do not know why. It says they were unable to determine if the fingerprints were from the thieves or from museum employees. That seems like a pretty easy like process of elimination. But maybe they didn't know if it was like museum patrons as well.
Well, what's the quality of the fingerprint samples that they were able to collect too?
That's true, but like I feel like they could at least say, well, we ruled out all the employees because we took their fingerprints and compared them, but like they could be from patrons. I don't know. They also found paint chips from the Rembrandts that had been cut out of their frames. So when they cut them, that hurts my heart so much. Paint chips from a Rembrandt just fell on the floor.
Makes me think of that picture that was restored but destroyed.
Yes. Yes.
Which also makes me think of Mr. Bean.
Why? No, I'm kidding. Let's see. So the guards and the witnesses the ones who had seen the cops in the car, and then the two guards gave descriptions of the thieves. They described one as, I guess, in general, they all described one as between 5'9" and 5'10", late 30s with a medium build, and then the other one between 6 feet and 6'1", in early 30s with a heavier build, which is like the least helpful descriptions you could possibly give. Rick was initially investigated because he had acted strange the night of the robbery. At one point during his patrol, he had opened and closed, it says a side door. I'm not sure if they mean like the side door that the thieves came in. But like it was just kind of weird. He just opened it and closed it. He said he routinely did this to make sure the doors were locked, which, like, hello, that door was not locked if you just opened it. But colleagues said if that was really something that he did like regularly, one of their supervisors would have noticed and would have told him to stop.
That would have been on logs and stuff.
Yeah, and like you're not supposed to do that. So, anyways,
you know what I'm thinking?
What?
He was smoking a cigarette. Threw the butt out.
Maybe that's not, and that's where the smoke or the fire alarm went off with the smoke. Also, Rick's footsteps were the only ones recorded by the motion detectors in the Blue Room during his patrol, obviously, but like technically he's the only one that we can say for sure was in that room, and something was stolen out of that room. So, you know,
still feel like 81 minutes. I mean, if they knew what they were doing, it feels like a long time for them to get in.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's from the time they entered and
to the time they were gone.
Okay, so yeah, that still accounts for.
Because you got to think it's going to take at least 30 minutes to,
and then basically deal with your
obstructions.
No, your victims, the hostages.
Oh, hostages.
That's the word I wanted.
Yeah.
You started with an H. Sorry.
Yeah.
He could be an accomplice. That opening and closing the door could be the signal.
Take a drink, because that was one of the things people said. They did have the motion detecting equipment inspected several weeks later to ensure that it was working correctly. And when it was inspected, they were like, yep, this is working fine. There's not like any malfunctions or anything. So who knows? Rick maintained his innocence until his death this past year. At the age of 54. So I don't want to disparage Rick's good name if he wasn't really involved.
Like I said, more likely he was probably smoking a cigarette or something and threw the butt out.
Yeah. The Blue Room does. I am confused by that. Like, I don't know. I want to know. Part of me wants to be like, okay, you don't have to bring the paintings back. Just like tell me how you got that one.
How'd you do it?
How'd you get the Manet? So the FBI let's investigate everyone, I guess. So they looked into Whitey Bulger, the famous crime boss.
I was like, I know that name.
The famous crime boss and Alcatraz inmate. Take a sip, everyone. You should know that an unofficial drinking rule is anytime I find a reason to bring up Alcatraz. So the museum was in his area, whatever that means. Like, you guys know what that means. He's a crime boss.
His domain.
Yeah.
His turf.
His turf. Thank you. That's a better word we should have used. It was in his turf. He also had strong ties within the Boston Police Department. So they're like, maybe that's how they got police uniforms. I would like to point out that in The Town, which we recently watched, they also had real police uniforms. And they did not have ties with the police. That's also a fictional movie. So who knows?
Also, the average person has not studied police uniforms closely enough to look.
True.
So anytime any like military branch is portrayed in TV or movies, they're required to have, I think it's like 6. They're required to have a certain number of inaccuracies.
Oh.
So
okay.
You can have a very accurate military personnel costume up to a point.
Right.
But you're required to, if, this lapel or this pin is always on the right lapel, you have to put it on the left.
Right.
Or you can only do this. Well, now you got to do that.
Right.
And it's, like I said, I think there's a certain number of inaccuracies you have to have when portraying any kind of military uniform or something,
right,
in movies and TV.
Yeah, that makes
sense. Someone fact checked me on that, because that's something I heard a long time ago when I was living in New Orleans, and a lot of my friends were in the film industry, and someone mentioned that offhandedly.
Interesting.
But regardless of that, I guarantee most people, the average person, is not super familiar and zoned in on police or military or any kind of uniform. Any kind of uniform like that.
Yeah.
That they would also know in a high stress situation of anytime the police show up when you're not expecting them to show up.
Yeah.
You're like, Okay, what's going on? Do I need to be scared? And you're more into, I guess, the self-preservation mode.
Yeah.
Than, hold on, let me scan your uniform to make sure that you are 100% legit. So I feel like it's not hard to fake a police uniform.
Yeah.
To the point where it's believable enough if you are also, putting a person in a stressful situation. They're not going to be like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, this was...
Your name tag is not in the right spot. And
this was probably a stretch because they were looking at Whitey Bulger and are wanting
they're just
make
looking
a connection.
For an excuse.
He also had strong ties to the Irish Republican Army, and apparently they... Are you okay?
Chills.
Oh, I was like, did something touch you? Apparently they had pulled off similar...
It's just a freezer in your house.
There's a literal jacket behind you still. There's a sweatshirt that you're leaning on.
Why didn't you tell me that when I first got in here?
I didn't know you were cold. I'm sweating. My butt is sweating right now.
I'm always cold in your house. Normally wear sweatpants over here.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, the Irish Republican Army had apparently pulled off similar organized art heists in the past, and apparently tripping the fire alarm was like their calling card. Who knows? To his credit, Whitey denied any involvement in the robbery. The FBI also investigated a number of men associated with the Boston Mafia. This got hella confusing, so I'm going to try to summarize, and I also am only mentioning the ones that I think are, like, credible. So first there's Robert Guarente of the Merlino gang. Obviously, we all know the Merlino gang.
Totally.
So after Robert died in 2004, his wife, Snitch, told the FBI that he had owned some of the stolen paintings. I don't know why you need to bring that up to the FBI after your husband is dead, unless he was a shitty husband.
I was about to say, maybe she was in an abusive situation.
That's
and
true.
She could finally rat on him.
I'm sorry, Missy.
So
Mrs.
maybe she's not
Guarente.
a snitch. Maybe she's like, I'm finally free, and I need to be fully free.
That's true. Well, according to her, after he got sick, because I think he had cancer, he gave the paintings to an associate named Robert Gentile, or Gentile. I want to say Gentile because that's how it's spelled. This other Robert Gentile was a Connecticut gangster.
I was about to say, if it's Italian, and Gentile.
Well, Gentile failed a polygraph in 2012, which means nothing, but he failed when he was asked if he had any knowledge or information about the robbery. A few days later, the FBI raided his house. They found a copy of the Boston Herald from 1990 that was reporting on the robbery, a piece of paper with the estimated black market price for each painting, and a hidden ditch under a false door in the shed. But there was nothing in there.
So, okay, he had those old articles.
Mm-hmm.
What other old articles did he also have? Or was that literally the
only, yeah.
Was that the only one? Or was he just someone who hoarded old articles that he found interesting to things? Or maybe he was like a fellow white girl who was obsessed with true crime and he loved to collect articles of other major crimes.
Yeah. It's all very circumstantial.
Super circumstantial. Because, that's not great that you found this article from, what was this, 14 years ago, you said? It was 2004? No.
It was 2012 when he failed the polygraph.
Okay.
And 1990 was the year of the...
Yeah, so...
So 22 years ago.
I was thinking 2004 because of what's-his-face died.
Yes.
Wife. So...
The other Robert.
Yeah, it is strange that he's got a news article from 22 years ago.
Yeah.
I also have a news article saved and framed from 22 years ago. Actually, more than 20. How many years has it been since high school?
For me or for you?
I mean, for you, it's one year more than yours. All right, hold on.
Think about it. 14 years?
All right, yeah. So I have a news article from almost 20 years ago, framed and hung up in my wall.
a lot of people have old news articles, especially about
And that was
big
me
things.
on the front page of the news when I moved to Tennessee after Katrina.
new girl moves to town.
And I don't have any other old random articles in my house that I know of.
Well,
But I have that one because it was significant to
I
me.
hope Shelton
And it was
doesn't
not about a
snitch on
crime.
you after you.
Well, it wasn't a crime.
Yeah. Well, and like, I do think it's weird. Like, why would Guarente's wife randomly contact the FBI and say my husband used to own these and he gave them to this other, like, unless she has something out for Gentile, I don't know.
I think if her husband died, she might just be like, before, because whether maybe he was her abuser, sure, maybe he was her protector, and now that he's gone, other rival gangs might come after her, and
She also
whatever
might just be hoping
she
for
and her
that.
husband had. So she's probably trying to be like, okay, FBI, I'm gonna tell you some stuff, and you are gonna get me to a safe place, and you are
Yeah.
gonna protect me
Yeah.
from these other rival gangs.
Yeah. And she could have just been after that reward money because I think at the time the Gardner was posting a $10 million reward for like information that led to the safe return of the art. To his credit, Gentile eventually went to prison for 30 years on drug charges. And despite the fact that giving information on the stolen works would probably get him out of his sentence, or at least greatly reduce his sentence, he always maintained that he didn't know anything. So if he did, he was very loyal to whoever he was protecting.
Or very scared of.
Or very scared of.
It might get him out, but it might also get him murdered real fast.
That's
I mean,
true.
we're talking mobs here. So.
Yeah. They got people everywhere. Okay, so now we have Bobby Donati. And the only
Bobby, were you Donati and you stole those paintings?
the only picture they had of him was from when he was like in his 20s. So the whole time I'm like picturing this like 24-year-old kid doing this. He was like in his 50s, but he was a member of the Patriarcha crime family. He had been involved in previous art heists. For example, he stole 5 Wyeth paintings from the Woolworth Estates in Maine. Wyeth is one of my favorite artists. Those paintings I think were returned. He was also involved in stealing a Rembrandt from the Boston Museum of Art, which I think was also returned or recovered. He and his brother had cased the Gardner Museum several times as early as the 1970s. They had noticed the lax security. Donati allegedly even unlocked or unlatched a lock on one of the windows at the museum. A, without anyone noticing, and B, he returned several times and it was still unlocked. So he was like, okay, they're not really checking stuff. So like, if we wanted to,
morbid curiosity now that I just want to go into random places and just see if I can get away with unlocking.
and then I'll save the article in the paper about how you got arrested for.
It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever had this desire or want when you were in high school. But I never really snuck out of my house. I mean, I kind of did, but I never went anywhere. I basically just snuck out of the window and like hung out in the yard. And it was more to just, not because I was trying to, it was more I was just seeing if I could sneak. Not because I was afraid I'd get in trouble.
You probably could go out the front door, but it was more exciting to go out the window and be secret-y.
Yeah, it was just more fun. But I always wanted to sneak out just to see if I could.
Yeah.
But it was one of those like, okay, it'll be a pre-planned thing. And it was more so when I was living with my aunt and uncle. And I'd be like, all right, Tom and Nikki, can I go, stay at Shanley's house tonight? Cool. Well, here's the catch. I'm not going to leave until after y'all go to bed. And I just want to sneak out just to see if I can. Not because I have interest in actually sneaking out in the future. This isn't an experiment to see if I can do it.
It's just,
I'm just curious if I could or not. Like, I want, it's like having a murder mystery dinner party.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, can I solve the crime? Can I commit the, pretend crime and get away with it? Not because you have interest in actually committing a crime at some point.
Yeah. I think the closest I've come to that is like, this is, I don't know why I'm so embarrassed to admit this, but like
compared to all the other stuff that we've admitted on this.
Yeah, like shoplifting something small at like the Walmart self-checkout, like, are they gonna notice if I left those batteries in the bottom of my shopping cart and then cover them with other... I don't think I ever did that. I for sure thought about, because it was like one of those tiny like watch batteries.
I've definitely accidentally shoplifted before.
Yeah, because it's easy to do it accidentally. And you could obviously, like, if you got caught, you could just say like, oh, I didn't even realize it was down there. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to.
I remember being in high school and Shanley and I went to Walmart and we were just there to look for like one or two things. And we ended up, we didn't get a basket or anything.
Right.
So it was like, oh, our hands are full. And look at this really cute little votive candle holder. It's shaped like a heart. I think it was like 94 cents or something like that. I mean, it was $1 at most.
Yeah.
And our hands were kind of full and we didn't want to drop it and break it because it was glass. So we just stuck it in, I stuck it in my back pocket, or Shanley took it in her pocket. I don't remember.
Yeah.
And then we went and we paid for all of our other things. And then we sat down in the car and I don't remember who it was, but pulled away like, oh no, we stole this. I was like, well, we could go back in and pay for it.
But...
Or we could just not, because it's 94 cents.
And it's Walmart. It's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. It's fine.
So I've accidentally shoplifted.
Yeah, I think I probably have too, but nothing big, obviously.
There's been times that I feel like I was just kind of spacing and I started walking. I was like, I have to pay for these things first. Hold on. Let me go back and...
What's okay?
What am I doing? I'm just leaving. Well, I think it was like I had like one or two small things in my hand and I was looking for something and I didn't find it. And those were just like, oh, well, I'll get this and I'll get this. They don't have the thing I'm looking for. All right, time to go. And I'm like, wait, no.
Yeah.
We don't take things.
Well, I told you about the time I spaced out and just left my purchased items at the Walmart.
Oh, God, no.
It was the most annoying. I was having one of those annoying days. And I got home and unloaded all of my groceries and everything and realized I was missing a bag, which, like, it wasn't a lot of money, but it was, like, stuff I needed. And I was, like, not willing to...
We got double charged for a box of diapers once, and Shelton and I kept that receipt for a long time with the intention of going back, and neither of us did. And we're like,
it's a pain in the ass to go back. And
so now I'm tempted to just go and... take a box of diapers.
Like, hey, I
already paid for this like 6 months ago, but
oh my gosh. Okay, back to Donati. He's unlatching windows. Also, allegedly, he took a special interest in the gold finial at the top of the Napoleonic flag for some reason. Who knows? Who's interested in that? Who's walking by all this other amazing art and is like, hey, look at that cool
gold carved thing.
Gold eagle on top of a flag. Anyways, he was also seen at a bar shortly before the robbery.
Well, yeah, because
holding
Day.
Holding a package that contained police uniforms. He had also used the police thing in the past, apparently, as like part of crimes.
Doing crimes.
All right, this is where we're going to get a little complicated, okay? That's Donati. He is our connection to this guy named Miles Connor. So, an associate of Donati's, a guy named David Houghton, visited Miles Connor, who is a notorious New England art thief, while Miles was in prison. David tells Miles, oh, hey, me and Donati planned that whole Gardner heist. I don't know if he said we did it or just like we organized it, but he was like, that was us. And we're going to use those paintings to get you, Miles, out of prison. Like, we stole them not to sell them on the black market. We're going to bargain, whatever. But both Donati and Houghton died within 2 years of the robbery. So they didn't get a chance to do this. Donati was killed by another gang. Houghton, I think, had a heart attack or something. But Miles, who's still in prison, told investigators that he could help them recover the stolen art in exchange for his freedom. And also the posted reward from the museum. I think I said 10 million earlier. I think it's 5 million at this point. So obviously the FBI say, no, that's not how that reward works.
It's like, we can maybe do something about the prison sentence and lowering it, but you're not getting the money.
Yeah, like, that's not who the reward is for. So Miles is like, okay, fine. And this part's a little confusing, but he tells them to talk to an antiques dealer and also a criminal named William Youngworth. Youngworth is where we wanted to end up. So we got...
I like that an antiques dealer is named Youngworth.
I know, right? So I don't know if...
Screams fake name to me.
I don't know if Miles was saying, like, no, go talk to Youngworth because he'll vouch for me that I know where the paintings are. Anyways, Youngworth holds a press conference and says that he could, quote, broker the return of 11 of the 13 stolen works. Sorry, you're not getting 2 of them. And in exchange, he wanted $5 million and Miles's release from prison. And obviously the FBI's like, no, that's not how this works. But they still start to investigate him. And while they're doing that, a journalist named Tom Marshberg gets interested in the whole story. So Marshberg starts talking to Youngworth, like, separately. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how charming this Marshberg guy was, but Youngworth agreed to show him, quote, proof that he could return the art. So in August of 1997, Marshberg was driven out to a warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Youngworth met him there, and inside one of the storage units, he shows him a large cylindrical tube. From that tube, he removes a rolled up canvas. He unrolls it and shows Marshberg what appears to be Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. In a Vanity Fair article in 2014, Marshberg said that he was certain that this was the actual painting.
Not the Finnick painting?
Not the... Yeah, poor Finnick. He said that he could see the frayed edges where it had been cut from the frame. I don't know what about it. He was so convinced this was like the real thing.
Well, maybe all the cloak and daggers of being driven out to a warehouse.
Yeah, I know. And also, male privilege,
I'm
Marshberg.
assuming like he's in this big giant building and it's all dark except for this like one kind of spotlighty area, and there's a desk and nothing else. Like it's all empty space except for this one small lit area, and there's just this tube, and he's shown a piece of art.
Also the male privilege of just wandering into an empty warehouse with a man.
Something.
Oh my gosh. So about a month. So like, he sees this. Youngworth is like, okay, obviously you can't report on this, because obviously we're gonna like move locations, so like it doesn't matter. About a month later, Marshberg is like urging Youngworth. He's like, listen, they don't believe me that I saw the real thing. You need to give them more proof, more evidence. So Youngworth provides investigators with 25 negatives and a small vial of paint chips. So the negatives produced pictures that I guess were too poor quality to really like tell, which, come on, I don't know, just get a better camera. The paint chips were tested. They proved to be 350 years old and of the region where both Rembrandt and Vermeer painted. But the museum had paint chips from the Rembrandts that were cut. They compared those, and they didn't match.
So these were paint chips from other paintings of the time, but...
Right. According to Marshberg, which I saw it kind of disputed, when they compared those paint chips to the Vermeer, again, according to Marshberg, quote, it appeared that the chips were quite consistent with the concert. I don't know. I also read that they had never been compared to the Vermeer, so like, whatever. According to this Vanity Fair article, the FBI was considering a deal with Youngworth after all of this, but like very unclear if anything happened. Obviously, I say obviously, but like the artwork has never been returned. So like,
okay, so that's what I've been waiting for you to tell me.
Yeah, so I'm assuming
it's still out there.
Yeah, I'm assuming Youngworth did not
34 years later
get out of prison.
Still missing.
Yes. In 2017, the reward offered for information that leads to the recovery of the art was $10 million. This is the largest bounty ever offered by a private institution, and also topped only by the reward offered by the U.S. government for Osama bin Laden, which was $25 million. Also, the statute of limitations has expired. So, like, if
literally
you're listening,
anyone could go and...
yeah, like, you could literally go and confess and be like, I have the art. They're going to take the art from you, but you can't be prosecuted. So, like...
And you can still collect on the reward?
I don't know. That would... Oh, my gosh. That's what that guy's wife was trying to do. So, like, if you're out there...
So maybe that's the reason. It's not to sell. It's to hold on, wait out the statute of limitations, and then collect on the reward.
That would actually be brilliant. That's
talk about playing the long
the
game.
long game. Because of Isabella's rule about not changing anything in the museum, the empty frames are still hanging in the galleries.
All right, that's a little creepy.
It is, but I really want to see
sad.
it. But that's the story of
So I am also... So, again, like, respect to Isabella.
Uh-huh.
But I'm also thinking, like, okay, well, in a way, yes, it's sad, and I am not, like, in tune with the art world and the art community and whatnot. And so, yes, it is sad, it's upsetting, and it's totally uncool that these paintings have been taken and never returned so that people cannot enjoy them now and in the future.
Right.
But I feel like focusing too much on the past artists, we're not paying attention to any of the artists who have come after them or any modern today artists. I feel like, I don't know, people are too busy worrying about their Van Goghs and their Picassos, their Rembrandts, to care about their Sylvianas or their Marshalls or their... And those are just names I came up with. Those aren't actual artists that I can name. But I'm just saying, like, there's other really talented artists who probably belong in the hall of, household names.
Yeah.
That just haven't been given their due.
Yeah.
Because we're too busy focusing on this handful.
I agree. I stand by Isabella because I just, you know me, I love old stuff. So, like,
I mean, respect, and I stand by
like
her, especially her wanting it to be a free museum.
Yeah.
I want her wanting it to be accessible to all. Awesome. Mad props.
But I think this was her being like, this was our, like, this is the way I want to preserve my life, my husband's life, our art.
This was the art that mattered to me, to us.
Go to the Boston Museum of Fine Art if you want to see
go see other art.
And because I have the opportunity to shout out a modern artist, because I do agree we should be, not stuck in the past. I
mean, still remember the greats, but also
for sure.
add to that
Give
list
everyone
of
else a chance.
household names. Like, it's...
Yeah.
Great art didn't just stop.
I agree. Yes. Well, I would encourage everyone to go on Instagram and look up Egbert Moderman.
I knew you were going to mention it.
Listen. I don't know if I'm sure I mentioned it on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
He's a couple years older than me, I think. So he's in his mid to late 30s. he's Dutch. He's self-taught. He was in New Bern for like a summer, which is how we found out about him and met him. His art is so beautiful. And in my opinion, it has like kind of an old master's quality to it.
Because these oils, right?
Yep. They're all oils. They're just beautiful. I'm looking through them right now. And we have one of them hanging in our living room. It's our Black Jesus. Anyway, he's just, obviously go look up whatever art you want. Kehinde Wiley is also a really good modern artist. He paints like hyper realistic. He like recreates like classic works, but he takes people that he finds like on the street, and it's usually like people of color, and he dresses them in like modern clothes. It's the coolest recreation. There's one at the Raleigh Museum, and they're huge. They're like 12-foot paintings, so they're like really overwhelming to look at.
I mean, great art doesn't have to be this magnificent thing. It just has to make you happy.
Exactly.
Again, if you think it's pretty, if it makes you happy, if you like it, that's good art. Like, it doesn't have to be this like super critiqued thing.
Yeah.
There's a guy in Colombia that everyone calls him the Chicken Man because he paints on these, I think it's just like a reclaimed wood. He'll find these long, narrow boards, and he creates these long-legged chicken drawings, and they're very simplistic, and he sells them for real cheap, and he'll do custom drawings too, and it's just like that's his thing, and everyone knows, if you go into somebody's house and you see one of those paintings, oh, you have a Chicken Man painting.
Yeah.
And it'll never be, it's definitely not the skill or the quality of a Rembrandt or a Degas or a Manet or anyone like that, but Shelton specifically requested one year, I think it was when we were still living in Columbia or when we were about to leave Columbia, he requested a custom painting, and it's hanging in our dining room. It's the giraffe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's, again, it's maybe a foot wide and, 3 feet tall, like plank of wood. And it's just a solid background and kind of just a very simplistic giraffe painting, but it's cute. It's pretty. It makes me happy. And the fact that the story behind it is what makes it good art to me.
Right.
Is that Shelton Shelton said, hey, can you do a giraffe? My wife loves giraffes.
Oh. That's a Kehinde Wiley that I just randomly pulled up.
I like it.
But that was the Three Graces. I'll link to him and to Egbert in the thing.
Cool.
I know. I don't remember the first place I learned about him, but when I found out the Raleigh Museum got one of his paintings, it's like...
And this is all painting, not photograph.
Painting.
So I love photorealistic art too.
And I think he literally just finds people on the street and is like, you want to pose? I hope he goes, hi, I'm Kehinde Wiley. Do you want to pose for one of my paintings? But
I mean, one of my favorite art pieces too is I was at a bar one night with some friends and we were just sitting around hanging out, and some guy comes over and hands me a napkin, and on that napkin is a picture of me that he had drawn, and he was like,
that's cute.
I'm so and so. I'm an artist, and I just, I noticed you sitting over there. I liked your look, and
that would have been a really adorable meet cute.
I mean, there was clearly the way he presented it he was not coming on to me at all.
Yeah, but it would be cute if he was.
Would be, yes. And I think he might have intentionally avoided that kind of attention so that he didn't come off as creepy.
Yeah. And
I was like, no, that's smart. This is really great. Like it just made me happy. It made me feel good about myself.
Yeah.
That he found me interesting to, like, this artist found me an interesting subject that he wanted to draw and recreate.
Yeah.
And so I had him sign it, and I was like, I'm going to bring this home and frame it. And I did.
Well, show it to me next time I'm over.
I will.
I also forgot Kehinde Wiley did the official portrait for Barack Obama, which is like kind of important.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to find the one from the Raleigh Museum, and I was like, oh, wait, Obama. I guess that's the more recognizable one.
Well, if you want to see the specific photos of tonight's episode, from Isabella to the art that has never been returned, you can check out our Facebook and Instagram. Just search the Tales We Tell podcast if you want to see photos, but don't do the social media. Google it. I mean, check out our website at thetaleswetellpodcast.com. All the photos and everything are also available there. If you want to support us and get yourself some sweet, sweet swag, check out our Redbubble store. We've got several different logos, and you can put that on anything. And if you want to support us but you don't need the stuff, become patrons at patreon.com. Search The Tales We Tell. You get early access, commercial-free listening, sometimes some fun bonus content, stickers, love notes, our undying love and affection, and the easiest, cheapest, freest way to support us is to go find our YouTube channel. It's The Tales We Tell podcast, and just hit that like and subscribe button. It costs you nothing, and it goes a long way for helping us, expand our reach, find more listeners, and yeah.
Yep. And don't forget, if you want a chance to win
a goodie bag,
become a patron
in the month of September.
Yep.
We'll work out
between now and September. We'll figure it out.
So,
but we'll be back next week with some kind of story. Someone's probably gonna die in. I don't know. And I'll forget. But we'll see you guys then.
Bye-bye.